Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. My name is Rob Hunsaker. I'm from Storage Product Management, and today I'm going to be talking about Apex Data Storage Services, which is a specific offering in our Apex portfolio, which is something that you may have seen commercials about on TV and wondered what is that? Well, Apex Data Storage Services is one of the first offerings and one of the newest offerings of Apex, and that's what we're going to be talking about specifically today. Apex Data Storage Services is the newest as-a-service offering in the Apex portfolio. It is an on-premises portfolio of scalable and elastic storage resources designed for OpEx treatment. Apex is optimized for simplicity. There are just 4 key service levels to choose from: data service, block or file storage, performance tier. We have 3 levels to choose from based on performance. Base capacity, this is the amount that you start at, and the term, you choose between 1 or 3 years. Apex Data Storage Services allows organizations to scale up and down elastically and only pay for what you use. Key principles of the as-a-service model include an emphasis on outcomes as opposed to infrastructure, providing the performance, capacity, and availability to meet workload requirements. You pay for what you use, like a utility model. As-a-service is designed for OpEx treatment, so you can move assets off the balance sheet and avoid the large capital expenditures necessary to maintain 3 to 5 year tech refresh cycles. Elastic resources mean you don't have to over-provision a lot of storage up front and can grow into capacity as it is required. All infrastructure is owned and maintained by Dell Technologies, so all of the administrative tasks and maintenance that accompany ownership of infrastructure is no longer your responsibility. You get all the enterprise-class benefits of on-premises infrastructure with the ability to operate the infrastructure without the headaches of ownership.
Hey Ron, is this turn out to be power store infrastructure, or do you talk about what the infrastructure layer is, or you hiding it, or what?
So one of the key tenets of Apex is that it's very focused on outcomes. So fundamentally, you're not purchasing underlying infrastructure. What you're purchasing is a service level and capacity amount. That being said, the block storage subscription is PowerStore. So we're not hiding that, but it's definitely not front and center either.
I got you. All right.
And we'll talk more about how the subscription is purchased. And I'm actually going to walk through an example of how that would be purchased in our cloud console. So you'll see what that subscription actually looks like and what it turns into behind the scenes in terms of how we deploy that. Is it's not transparent to the user, but it's not what matters most to the user, right? What they're really asking for is a subscription to block storage at a certain amount of capacity and a certain amount of performance. And we're seeing a lot of demand for storage as a service model, and analysts are predicting high growth for as a service. IDC predicts a 3x increase in demand taking place in 2021, specifically for on-premises infrastructure delivered in an as a service model.
So Ron, you mentioned block and file. Did that include object as well?
Object is not a primary offering today.
Well, that was good. Thanks.
Gartner predicts also, in addition to IDC, that by 2024, we'll see over half of newly deployed storage capacity sold as a service or via subscription, a notable increase from less than 15% in 2020. If you look at traditional purchasing model for data storage, there is often an ongoing challenge to align deployed capacity with actual usage. There's a tendency to over-provision in order to avoid risk. But if the business is growing or capacity requirements become unpredictable, despite best efforts, you may still end up exposed to risk associated with under-provisioning. When storage usage approaches the risk threshold, the traditional response is to deploy much more storage capacity than is needed at that point in time. With an efficient as-a-service model, you pay only for the capacity you use, so there is no wasted expense associated with over-provisioning. In fact, all of what has traditionally been wasteful expense gets removed from the equation and transitioned to savings. And given that we have a big, large historical install base, we see from our call home data that customers over-provision a lot of storage, which in normal capital situations is great for us, right? We're selling more storage than people are using, but there's been a demand to align those two things together. And that's one of the things that Apex is offering, but it's far more than just a different purchasing model. Apex is fundamentally a different deployment model also. We built a new platform specifically for ordering and managing Apex. The Apex console is a unified and seamless experience to manage your entire Apex journey to enable agile IT service delivery by reducing complexity. The console allows an organization administrator to onboard stakeholders controlling access and individual privileges so that they will have self-service access to discover outcome-driven solutions through a catalog of infrastructure services. The Apex console will allow you to configure and subscribe to new services with seamless built-in approvals and purchasing, set up workloads and application on deployed solutions, use the services to meet business requirements while monitoring key performance indicators, proactively manage performance with complete transparency of performance, utilization, and spend, and update or renew subscriptions with the ability.
So this is not just a credit card. I log into the Apex console and say I want 100 terabytes of storage tomorrow. It's not this sort of thing. I mean, infrastructure has to be delivered, provisioned, and all of this stuff, right? I mean.
Right. Apex is an infrastructure solution, and we target a 14-day time to value, but it's not something like a virtual edition of PowerStore in the public cloud. It is fundamentally underlying hardware infrastructure.
What does 14-day time to value mean?
It means that from when you purchase, and actually we'll go through what the purchasing process looks like right now, but what we mean when we say 14-day time to value is from when you purchase an Apex subscription in the console. Our goal is to have that up and running in your data center in under 14 days.
What does up and running mean?
Deployed and operational and ready to provision data storage. Fully deployed.
Because, I mean, you're showing us a lot of stuff, and I hate to be rude. But, obviously, it seems, or I shouldn't say obviously, this seems like this is a response to cloud computing, right? And with cloud computing, all of those customer problems that you showed us, that's what cloud computing does. You just, say, I need some more, they give you more. And in the background, they're managing that and taking care of it. So is that what's happening here? If in 14 days is not like it is in the cloud. Cloud, I say I need this, it happens pretty quickly. So kind of, are you getting to the guts of this, of like literally what happens? Okay.
Yeah. So right now I'm going to go through literally what happens when you order in the console. And then I actually have a couple slides that specifically compare Apex data storage services to the public cloud. So I think it'll make what the offering actually is a bit more clear. But I mean, fundamentally, we are shipping and installing infrastructure in customers' data center, that the infrastructure is owned and maintained by us, but it is infrastructure in their data center. And I have a couple slides talking about what the different responsibilities are of us and the customer.
So what the customer is subscribing to is getting hardware as well as the resources to manage the hardware. Is that what I'm hearing?
So we are doing a lot of the management, and we're doing the core management of the infrastructure. But in terms of provisioning and whatnot, and I'll go through that in detail. I have a slide on that.
Okay.
So just hold on. So this is what getting started with an Apex data storage offer would look like. It's a simple, user-friendly experience via the cloud console, which I'm going to walk through now. You begin by selecting the data service, which is the storage best suited for your workload. You have the option for block or file services today as a part of the ADSS offer. In this example, we're selecting block services. Next, you have the option to select a performance tier. Options range from a colder cost optimized to high performance storage to suit your use case. You simply make your selection based on your performance requirements, and you'll pay higher rates for higher performance.
I have a question. So when we start thinking about assessing performance requirements, something like this is going to be for organizations that may not have a lot of talent in their IT pool, because you're going to replace that. How are they going to figure out what they really need?
So this is the Cloud Console, which is a self-driven storage option. We also, of course, have very many pre-sales reps that have offline advanced storage configuration tools that they'll have access to. So if a customer wants that type of advanced help with configuration, the recommendation would be to reach out to their storage specialist, their storage account rep.
And if they're replacing something internally, can you do an assessment to determine what kind of capacity and performance they're currently using so you can sufficiently replace it?
Absolutely. And we have internal automated tools that our salespeople would have access to be able to do exactly that.
And what does that do to lead time? I mean, obviously there's going to have to be sort of a pre-sales qualification to understand what's needed, but is that going to to do that kind of an analysis. I mean, this one of the things that seems like you're trying to address here is you use the phrase time to value, the time to value for infrastructure, which can be tremendously long for organizations that are buying their own. You're trying to get that to 14 days. When you have to do an assessment, how does that impact that time to value?
So the time to value clock would start once the purchase is actually made. So anything prior to that, in terms of deciding what the subscription is to be purchased, would be outside of that 14 days. That being said, if you call up one of our salespeople and say, hey, we want to buy storage in the next 2 days, I think they'll bump it to the top of their priority list. And the tools that we have for automating the configuration are sophisticated enough that it shouldn't be a weeks long process to get that going. It should be relatively fast.
Thanks.
So after selecting the performance tier, you'll select your base capacity. And I'm going to talk more about this on the next slide, what base capacity actually is, but this represents the minimum amount of capacity required. And the cost of this capacity will be the foundation of your billing cycle. You can always exceed your base capacity by utilizing on-demand capacity, which will be available at the same rate as your base capacity. So while some of our competitors charge a premium for on-demand usage, we charge a single simple rate for both base and on-demand usage, so you can use as much as you need without any overage fees. In this example, we're selecting 100 terabytes. Next, you select your term. You have an option for 1 or 3 year terms, and a longer term will result in a reduced rate. You can increase the base capacity at any time during your term. In this example, we're selecting a 1 year term. Once those 4 service levels are selected and the additional work is done to process the order, we target a 14-day time to value, as we mentioned before. So here's how capacity utilization actually works. You select a base capacity, which is a minimum amount of storage commitment. Anything you use above and beyond that is on-demand usage. And remember, you're paying a single rate for both base capacity and on-demand usage. The higher the base capacity amount, the lower your rate. As on-demand usage takes place, it may go much higher than base capacity. In this case, you'll have the option to raise base capacity, resulting in a lower rate, because we charge a discounted rate the higher your base capacity is.
How much overhead are you building into your tiers of service because obviously people don't want to wait 14 days if they need another terabyte of storage. How much capacity are you building in for growth before you have to start adding hardware?
Good question. So when we configure an initial system, we guarantee at least 25% of additional capacity. But as customers write into that on-demand capacity, we've created advanced algorithms for predicting future growth. And we're actually just going to continue to ship capacity as they use it with no additional cost to the customer. So say a customer ordered 100 terabytes and they've now written 100 terabytes. We're going to be looking at time to full predictions, and we're going to be shipping out capacity proactively to add to the customer's site that we're not charging them for as a fixed cost. They're only getting charged based on usage. So if a customer is growing a lot, it could be to the point where their initial subscription was 100 terabytes, but now they have 400 terabytes on site, of which 300 is all on-demand usage.
So is that still under the 14-day time to value as you ship out the?
So we're trying to proactively manage that so that it would never come to the point where they're full within where the 14-day would matter. And generally, it's faster for us to deploy capacity than an initial configuration, right? Because we're not shipping out a rack, for example. It would just be hardware nodes or possibly even drives, just hard drives.
And but by shipping, that means that there is a tech with a truck, right?
Yes.
Basically. Okay.
And we do all the installation and the management of that. So we would coordinate that with the customer to let them into their data center. But as far as them actually having to worry about what's happening with the hardware or the deployment, that would be a Dell managed activity.
And is this intended, to augment what customers are already doing or replace it? And the reason I ask is, is there going to be a Dell managed rack and a local tech managed rack? How's that going to work?
So we expect that customers this is absolutely not replacing our capital business, right? Our capital sales and purchasing business. It would be more of an augmentation. I think a lot of customers may go to 100% Apex, but a lot of them will decide for a combo of both, depending on the use case. If you think about what a capital purchase would be, maybe you want to do a CapEx purchase on the bulk of your data that you know you're going to have. And then you may want to maintain an Apex subscription for your unknowns, right? Your growth, for more flexibility.
The capacity has a very interesting multi-level discussion here in PowerScale. I mean, it's thin provision, it's deduped, it's compressed. So are we talking effective capacity or compressed capacity, or so am I, I go out, I say I want 100 terabytes of data. Is that 100 terabytes effective, even though I might be only using, 1/4 of that physical?
So the base capacity and the on-demand capacity that we're billing based on is based on what the host sees. So it's most closely
capacity.
Logical capacity.
I got you. All right,
logical / effective, depending on your terminology.
All right, thanks.
So what customers are actually using, similar to the public cloud, is what they'd actually be getting billed for. I'm going to have to skip through these slides due to time, but one of the key tenets of Apex, I'm just going to summarize this real quickly, is that we do have a customer success manager that's assigned to every account that works on making sure that capacity is managed and working with the account to actually make sure that everything is working within the confines of their operation. And so to that point, Apex services are customer operated with infrastructure that is owned and maintained by Dell. So let's discuss what that actually means for Apex data storage services. With customer operated, you maintain operational control of workloads and applications, as well as site readiness, power, HVAC, space, and cooling. You also manage data access. So that's creating, modifying, or deleting volumes or shares, so providing access to your users. And you maintain data protection policies. So if you want a specific snapshot policy or replication schedule, that would be up to the customer to configure. Dell owned and maintained refers to managing the offer's underlying infrastructure, storage, hardware, and software from initial on-premise installation of the Dell owned infrastructure to managing it day to day.
So what happens if there's a problem with like an emergency patch with the with any of the drivers or anything else with the hardware? Do you guys come right out? Is there escalated support for that? What happens?
Yeah, so something like hardware patching and software would be that would be something that would be up to us, and we would try to address those immediately. This wouldn't be your standard 24-hour SLA type of thing. It'd be working with the customer to schedule that on a faster basis than normal as a managed service.
And by faster, I mean, if I'm a customer and I have critical infrastructure that I'm going to have Dell manage, do I have SLA options so that I can have, so if there's a failure in this infrastructure, I'm not down while I wait for Dell to show up? How does that work?
So part of Apex is that a lot of the management can be done remotely. If there is a hardware failure, it would fall under our fastest hardware SLA that we offer, depending on what it actually is.
What is the fastest?
Off the top of my head, I don't know all the options, but I think there's down to 4 to 6 hour.
I believe it is the 4 hours. 4 hours. Yep.
Thanks, Abhishek. There's also responsibilities that are shared between Dell and the customer. So for example, you are responsible for network connectivity to Apex Data Storage Services infrastructure. Dell is responsible for management and clustering network within the infrastructure. So an example of that would be, we would be responsible for the management network, but the customer would be responsible for the front-end network. For host and share connectivity taking place after the initial deployment, you're responsible for setup and configuration, and Dell will provide assistance when necessary. And security is also shared, of course, given it's the customer data center with customer responsibility for securing the data center. And physical network, Dell will assist with security audits and compliance. And the customer success manager serves as a trusted advisor to ensure worry-free experience. It's all designed to provide simplicity, agility, and control while knowing Dell will take on the task of managing and optimizing the infrastructure. So back to the promise.
What else is included in Apex? This is the data services, but as I think about, I'm going to go back to the failure scenario. A 4-hour outage would be a problem. I assume that there's resiliency options somewhere at the data center level.
So the long-term vision of Apex, you'll hear this from Michael Dell himself, is that all ISG infrastructure products is our goal to get into Apex. And we're rolling those out one at a time. Apex Data Storage Services is just one of the first.
Got it. Thanks.
So we're running very short on time. So I want to get through this cloud comparison. So many organizations are using the public cloud, and it's natural to compare this offering to that. And for a lot of customers, we do see this as a replacement to the public cloud. And there are many benefits to public cloud. And the reality of the situation, though, is that we live in a hybrid cloud world where public cloud and on-premises infrastructure both have important roles to play in the hybrid cloud operating model. While public cloud may be a fit for many workloads, in certain situations, our customers prefer or require to have their infrastructure on-premises rather than in the public cloud. With Apex Data Storage Services, you get predictable and simple pricing that is easy to understand with a single rate for both base and on-demand usage with no egress fees. On-premises infrastructure is less susceptible to latency issues since the data and applications are closer in physical proximity. The public cloud simply can't match the consistent high-level performance of scalability of storage solutions from Dell. On-premises data helps you meet data localization, regulatory, and audit requirements that the public cloud may not accommodate. Furthermore, with public cloud vendors, customers often need to re-platform their apps and rebuild their infrastructure, which could cause security and performance issues. With Apex Data Storage Services, you get the best of both worlds. You can recognize the benefits of public cloud with the control and enterprise class features of on-premises infrastructure deployed in an as-a-service model. For customers that want an even more cloud-like experience, coming soon, Apex Data Storage Services will be available as a co-located services in Equinix data centers. Equinix is the world's largest digital infrastructure provider of data center co-location and interconnection services. Together, we can combine our global scale and industry-leading technologies to deliver our customer unprecedented flexibility and choice. This expands the value of the Apex portfolio by delivering a consistent as-a-service experience wherever organizations run their critical workloads. Resources can be deployed where needed by simply choosing the preferred location through Apex Console to achieve high-performance connections to all major clouds at scale and across the globe. Equinix facilities ensure secure, dynamic, on-demand multi-cloud connectivity for customers that want to take advantage of public cloud compute. Infrastructure is still owned and maintained by Dell at an Equinix facility, and customers only pay for what they use with a single invoice, support, and contract from Dell. So this is truly a partnership with Equinix and not just something that we're sending to their data centers and hoping it works out. And Equinix has a very wide reach. A big percentage of public cloud edge nodes aren't near Equinix, they're actually in Equinix. So with Apex Data Storage Services in Equinix, you'll be able to see all the benefits of enterprise data storage combined with the benefits of being able to attach storage directly to multi-cloud compute in a cloud-like as-a-service operating model. We see this as being used for many use cases, but Apex and Equinix is particularly well suited as a DR site or data center consolidation. I receive feedback from customers all the time that they're happy running their primary data center, but they would like to consolidate secondary sites. The business model of Apex is perfect for this use case. And this is kind of the use case that was mentioned earlier of combining Apex with traditional subscription CapEx purchases, because it will continue to allow them to not have to maintain secondary data centers, and they won't have to own all the compute required for DRment. They can configure their environment to use burst on-demand compute while consuming the persistent storage as a service. We expect many customers to not choose a single deployment model for their storage purchases. It's very likely that customers may choose a combination of capital purchases, Apex Data Storage Services in their core data centers, combined with subscriptions in Equinix data centers.